Right, this is a fun part of my day. I'm going to be critiquing three match reports that were generated by participants in the Startup FC project. Now, Startup FC is an initiative where we're going to be giving real football data to people who are interested in sports science, giving them a chance to develop and show off their skills. But before I get into the actual critiques of the three reports that have been submitted, I want to talk a little bit about what a match report is actually supposed to do. Because I think a question you need to start off with before you even write the report is, what decisions are you trying to influence? And one of the ways I have of looking at a decision is MLSD, more, less, same, or different. So when I look at a training report or a match report, I want that report to be able to tell me, should I be doing more of something, less of something, the same, or do I want to be doing something different? And hopefully the information it can be presented in a way that makes it easy for me to make that sort of decision. Now, in general, as a sports scientist, I want to see particular things in a match. First of all, I'm hoping that I'm not going to be seeing anything unusual or excessive. I don't want to suddenly see that a sprinter has sprinted 200 meters or a centre back has hit some top speeds or done an unusual amount of distance. Because that said to me that this match has got out of control in some ways, and it's placed loads on my players that I don't really want them being exposed to. But apart from that, I've actually got some position-specific outcomes that I want to see. That in general, I don't want to see my centre backs having done a lot of work. So it's not always a case of more is better. But if one of my centre backs has gone into a 1v1 with a striker, I want to see that he can hit a high top speed if necessary. I generally want to see lots of distance and lots of work from midfield players. And we're going to have to think a little bit about how we actually measure what work and what high intensity is. And then finally, from the attackers, I want to see lots of high speed. I want to see that they've found space to run into and maybe even found space to run past opposition players. What does a coach want to know from a report? He wants to know for each individual player, what kind of training does he need to put on for the next few days? And he needs to know, is the player available for the next match? Is the player showing that he's fit enough to play the next match? So he's got to be making those kinds of decisions as well. And hopefully my report can simplify that decision-making process. And then the last thing that I want a report to do is, in general, I really want to be clear that a physical report best just comments on physical performance. You're not measuring football performance with GPS, but sometimes there are hints. And one of the hints is, did we maintain our effort throughout the match? Did we keep working hard despite either going ahead or going behind? Was the effort distributed correctly in the team? Like I said, did the different positions play their roles? Did we find space to run into and deny to our opponents? And finally, did we press and did we show for the ball? And this is kind of an interesting one because generally pressing is associated with high deceleration loads and showing for the ball is associated with high acceleration loads. So can I give any assistance to the coach when he's evaluating the tactics, how the match played out tactically, and the feedback that he wants to give to the players? So that's kind of what I'm looking for from a report. And let's go into the three individual reports that have been submitted. What I will say first of all is one of the things I obviously have a lot of people contacting me and interested in the field and looking for jobs and that kind of thing. And one of the first things that I would say is what myself or any employer is looking for. Well, two things. The one is experience, and the other is initiative. And all the three reports that have been submitted in this project are a sign of people taking initiative. So thank you for that and congratulations for that. When it comes to the first report, the strength of this report is it's simple and I've got all of the information on one page. Remember that your coach is generally stressed. He's generally got information overload. He's got a lot of work to do. And the more simply you can present that information to him, the better. So what I like about this report is all of the information is right there in front of me, and that's useful. A couple of comments. I think we've got to think about what metrics are important. So total distance, yes, I want to know that. Total distance sprinted, yes. Longest distance on field, we'll have a little chat about that later. 156 meters, football pitch isn't that big. Max acceleration, I do want to know that. I'm unfamiliar with these units. So I think this, and what's good about this report is I've been given a choice of units because the person who's writing this report has not spoken to me and asked me what units I actually want. And this is something you have to do with your coach, is you've got to ask them what units do they want, because some people use kilometers an hour, other people use miles an hour, meters per second. But what I would do is I would want to establish from that coach what units do they want, and then just go with one single unit because it's going to make your table a lot simpler. I want to know maximum acceleration, average acceleration, not really interested in. Maximum velocity, yes, I'm interested in that. And well done to Gilbert for hitting 29.61 kilometers an hour. That's not a bad top speed. And he may not even have been exposed to his maximum speed, we don't know. Average velocity in football is not really that interesting. If you or I went for a brisk walk, we'd probably cover more than 9 kilometers in 90 minutes. And anyway, total distance is just a function. Well, average velocity is just a function of total distance. So I'm not that interested in this one. Player load, I'm definitely interested in that. Definitely interested in how many sprints are done. But one other thing on this is, let's not talk about total distance sprinted. Let's just use the actual metric, because I don't want to have to remember all these different definitions of what a sprint is, or what a high velocity distance is, or a medium velocity distance. Just tell me the actual speed that has been done, and tell me, define what a sprint is for me. So I know in this particular report there was an explanation below the table, but I would find it easier just to have, let's say runs above 27 kilometers an hour, whatever your definition is. But like I said, great work on the report. Well done for having the initiative to submit. And I like the table format. Okay, let's go to report number 2. And I'll show it to you here. This is report number 2. So the first thing I'd say about this report is looks great. I like the fact that the sports scientist has found the club logo, has put it in. This is a historic club. They've been around since 1891. The heat map, great work. That was one of the initial comments of the coach was likes the heat map, and the coach could immediately see, wow, this can actually give us some tactical information as well, which is kind of going beyond the remit of a sports scientist, but good work there. So a couple of comments here, and again, it comes back to that MLSD, is I really like the way this report looks. And, visually, I like the way the charts combine with the tables, but actually, I don't want to have to look all over the report to find my numbers. Ideally, I'm going to have all my numbers just in the same place. But the combination of numbers and charts, I like that. I like the fact that, for example, I'm being shown a velocity throughout the period of the match. I just can't quite figure out, am I seeing 53 minutes over here? Does that mean that I'm not seeing the whole match? I'm not totally clear on that. And it looks like here the accelerations, is this minutes over here? Am I just seeing 1/2? Maybe if I can have that explained. And then the other comment I would make is great work on the heat map. 2 things. The number one is part of the heat map is showing people sitting in the dressing room. So obviously we'd want to clip the data so that we're only showing match data. And then the other thing is, it looks to me possibly as if this is data from 2 halves, and it looks like this is a it's probably a left-sided defensive player, um, but in one half they've been mainly in this part of the pitch, and the other half they've been mainly on that part of the pitch. And what would be really useful for me is if you could actually flip one of the halves. So I've got all of the location as if the players are generally playing bottom to top. Just to go back to the comments on report number 2, again, congratulations for the submission. It looks great. Preference, gather all the table-based data in one place. Let's think about those more, less, same, different decisions. How is a coach going to look at this report and be able to make decisions about training the next day or the next match? Should the coach be arresting this player? Can he play him again? Can he ask him to do more of anything or less of something? And finally, let's come back to how can we measure intensity? How can we measure how hard a player is working? Now, in the media, they mainly just use total distance, for example. But like I said, if we just go for a brisk walk, we're going to cover quite a lot of total distance in 90 minutes. So what other measures can we have of intensity? And that question brings me on to report number 3. And report number 3, once again, looks fantastic. Well done for having the initiative to find the logo. The sports science team who put this together have called themselves the Scanners. I like that. And here we go. So I'm being presented with very clear information. I've got total distance traveled, which is definitely one of the things that I'm interested in. And I've also got a first half, second half, and a whole match breakdown, which is also useful to me because it's telling me something if the players covered a lot more distance in the first half than the second half. Distance per minute. Now, distance per minute is kind of an interesting metric because I'm not really interested in total distance per minute because it's just analogous to total distance, given that a match lasts a fairly standard period of time. But what distance per minute can do is it can give me some measure of intensity. So if I'm actually plotting distance per minute, minute by minute, it can tell me how far a player has traveled in any particular period of time. And it's not the best measure of intensity, but at least it is a measure of intensity. Then I've got maximum velocity and high speed efforts, maximum velocity reached and mean. Now here, once again, very clear information, like the way it looks. It's well labeled. I can see everything that's going on. So, also in the world of football, you don't know how data literate your coach is. So the more simply and clearly you can present information, the better it's going to be. And I really like the clarity of the way this information is presented. Total high-speed efforts. And here what we've got is we're just using 18 kilometers an hour and 23 kilometers an hour instead of a label, which, like I said in the last critique, I like that idea. The only thing I would say here is 18 kilometers an hour really high speed? Was 23 kilometers an hour really high speed? What else? How many categories of high speed would we want to portray? Accelerations and decelerations. We've got maximum and we've got a count. Now, this is another thing that a lot of sports science reports use a count of acceleration or deceleration. And this is, and you can actually see it in the key. Accelerations were counted as any value above 3 meters per second for over a second or more. So well done for doing this calculation. Well done for defining exactly what it is that you've measured and reported on. My comment would be, just as with the total high-speed efforts, I'm interested in how far somebody's traveled above 18 kilometers an hour. I'm also interested in how far somebody's traveled above 23 kilometers an hour. But I'm very interested in how far somebody's traveled above 27 kilometers an hour. Can't I see that also? And the same would go for accelerations. for sure, I'm interested in how many times somebody's accelerated above 3 meters per second, but I'm also interested in how many times he's accelerated above 2 meters per second, or 4 meters per second. So can't I see that too? And can you find a way to present this more high resolution data in a way that is still simple and clear? Then this I really like. And the reason why I like this is because of this explanation table. And this is something I often find with footballers is when I'm going through a match report with them, I need to be able to tell them, look, you've got a particular distance at 21 k's an hour, but what does that mean? What is 21 kilometers an hour? And here there's a nice table that explains that. The only thing I would say is 23 kilometers an hour is not really maximal intensity. 29 kilometers an hour is maximal intensity, or for some footballers, 32 k's an hour is maximal intensity. So let's have a little think about this, but in principle, good idea. Total accelerations, decelerations, and speed zones. Okay, so again, in the report, I really like the fact that the sports scientists are just saying we're not able to accurately find the number of accelerations or decelerations, and this is a big deal. Is if you don't know something, say it. It's really important. Don't be wrong. Just say that you don't know. Give yourself time to go and figure it out. Because the one thing you cannot afford to do is give people information, and that sets in chain a series of actions or decisions, and then you've got to go back to them at some point in the future and say, actually, I was wrong. Rather just say, hang on, I don't know. Let's not act on this right now. And this comes to page 7, which again is a page that I really like. And here we have an effort to answer the question about aerobic intensity. And there are a series of deductions. The deduction is saying that if speed zones correlate to heart rate zones, the aerobic threshold will be around 70 to 85% of maximum speed, so on and so on. Based on this, our players spend approximately 6.3 minutes running in their aerobic threshold zone. So nice, and at least that's something. So I've got a number now, 6.3 minutes, and there's a logic to that you've been able to explain. So that's all good. What would make this more useful to me is that speed is not the only contributor to intensity. There are another couple of things, because a hard acceleration is also hard work. A hard deceleration is also hard work. Speed is hard work. And then when it comes to speed, 30 kilometers an hour is exponentially harder than 25 kilometers an hour. So I can't just take the total amount of distance that somebody spent above 25 k's an hour or 20 k's an hour. It would be even better if I could have some way of acknowledging the increased effort required to run at high speeds. And then the last point I'd make about this is when it comes to intensity, the actual output is not the only function. The other function is how clustered it is, because it's very hard for me to run at 27 kilometers an hour for 2 minutes if I do it all in one go. If I can break it up into 10 efforts, it's going to be a whole lot easier. So I've got to acknowledge how closely packed different efforts are. Do some work on that. And then I've got a nice set of references, and what I like about this page is it refers to the fact that we are sports scientists. Now, Startup FC is not exclusively for university students, so anybody who's got an interest in sport and data and measurement, you're all welcome to participate, but we've got to be scientific, we've got to be rigorous. So well done to this team, because they've included a reference page there, which personally I wouldn't show to the coach, but I would want it to be available just to show that I can back up what I've done. So to get to the comments on the third report, in addition to the comments on the second report, thank you once again. Congratulations for the submission, showing initiative. Looks great. good information. I like page 5, which is a page with the key on it showing, explaining what the different running speeds are. Nice deduction about the intensity. Let's think about that some more. Having said that, those were 3 individual player match reports. The next task for the participants in the Startup FC project is I would like you to submit a match report compiling data from every player. So I'll be publishing a link to the full match report onto the WhatsApp group. If you need any specific information from the coaches, for example, who played in what position, what units of measurement do they want to see, please put that into the WhatsApp group also. Can we have some information on intensity? And let's try and be as clear as possible as what MLSD decisions will this report help us make for training or for the next match. That's it to me. The last comment, a massive thank you to Catapult who are making this project possible. They are providing the monitoring equipment, the GPS devices that Aussie Football Club are using to generate the data that we're publishing for people to work with. I've got a long relationship with Catapult. We heavily reliant on them, and it's brilliant to have their support for this project. So thank you to Catapult. And thank you to everybody who is participating so far. Well done, and let's get stuck into the next.